And welcome to Stages of Processing, the 7 phases of emotions. And I'm so glad to be here and to give my second talk from with the webinar series. And since last time we had a fun time with the immune system, today we're going to step back and look at something that's in every single process that we're going to be doing, or at least most of them, and that's the 7 phases of emotions. Because there are emotions in just about every process that we do in kinesiology. And so to start off, I want to start with the quote from Caroline Myss: "Our biography becomes our biology." And to me, this statement really brings front and center the main issue of what we're working with in kinesiology. We're working with people's biography. And because we're working with their biology, and every single format that we're putting in that works with the cells, works with the organs and the chakras, and every class that we've taken on how to work with a client, work with their biology, there's a reflection in their biography. And sometimes this kind of just comes out automatically. We start working with the person. Sometimes they'll have memories come to mind that'll spring to mind when we're working with them. And sometimes it's a little bit more explicit, like when we're working with the chakras. It depends on what plane we're working with on that chakra. And that plane, it could be emotion, it can be astral, which is emotional, or mental. But they're all determined by by the client's biography, by what they've experienced. And what they've experienced has then gone into their cells and their energy fields and become a part of their story, and the story of what that person is all about, and what that person is, where they're coming from and where they're going, and how each biochemical process in our being uh, becomes enacted is based upon the biography. And so it's the same with formatting. When we're formatting the biology, we want to get as specific as possible. We want to look at the biochemistry that's going on. Because we could just format organs. We could just format uh, we but we don't because we're glutton for details. We want to format everything, and so we do these amazing procedures, these amazing balances that can go all the way to the cellular level, and we even work with genes. And so I want to apply some of that same detail to the emotional level. And what's going to happen is that the more attention you pay to biography, then the more the more available the person's biology will be. And so we'll be able to work with people at a deeper level the more we pay attention to this biography. So so a lot of times, we work with an emotion, we work with a thought, we work with something that can identify what's going on. And so now what we're going to work with is, I've divided the process of processing emotions into 7 stages. So those 7 stages, I hadn't seen those before. I hadn't seen actually anybody say, well, this is this stage of emotion, this is another stage of emotion, and that was a new thing. And so as I actually came up with a rough format for it, and I'm going to share that format with you today, so you're able to take home something practical that you can use in your balances. So So this emotional energy is that we have, like I say, it's in every single balance. It's stored everywhere. And as we're doing these balances, we are actually liberating emotional energy. And every format that we do that brings up stress is most likely going to have some emotional energy that's liberated as well, because we our emotions tend to congeal. They tend to become solid. And so as they become solid, they go down into our physical body. And as they go down into our physical body, uh, they become part of our story. And then we repeat that story over and over and over. And so we arrive to a point where we're not in choice, because it's our story that's talking. It's not our consciousness, our awareness. We've lost awareness, and so we're just repeating something that we probably decided a long time ago. In fact, we probably decided it before age 5. I find that the deepest issues are all decided before age 5, which is when finally our cortex basically becomes becomes usable, where we fully get beta waves at age. It's actually about age 6, but before age 6, we don't have full use of our beta waves, and so we don't have the ability to use our cortex fully until about age 6, 5 or 6. And so what happens is we're beta waves are, full conscious decisions. That's we need beta waves to really become the humans that we know of. And so it's interesting that we start school, at least here in the States. We start kindergarten at age 5, and we start first grade at age 6. And that's a great age for according to brain development. And so everything before that is made by lower brain waves. It's made by, instead of beta waves, it's made by alpha waves and theta waves, and even some delta waves when we're really asleep. We talk about delta waves for sleep, but at that age, it's just a decision that's not structured. That there's not choice behind it. So we need to go back and we need to revisit that choice that we made at before age 6, or whatever age it was, because it's not always then, but that's where they build up. We built up a lot of biography before age 6 that we don't even realize, and we stored it all in our cells. And so a lot of our processes are going to be liberating that. So in order to do that, we actually continually are processing at a subconscious level. And so the formatting for these stages of processing is really something that we're doing already. It's something that our brain it's a process where we're doing it all the time. When we bring up a specific issue in a circuit, then an emotion is going to pop out. And that emotion is going to be at one of these stages already. We're already have processed it to some degree. And so just doing a little bit of formatting, we can see where's the person at in this emotion. Because when I say emotion, a lot of people think, oh, I'm crying, I'm crying. That's what people think of. But there's various stages and various ways of expressing these emotions. So let's start at the beginning. So the stage 1 is just a raw awareness of our emotions. Oh, here's what we're talking about. So stage 1, we have a raw awareness of our emotions. It doesn't mean we're actually feeling it, because a lot of times we'll bring up an emotion with a person and they'll say, what? I don't have that emotion. I've never felt, anger. No, I'm not feeling angry. I'm not angry at all. Not even angry. and so that's the never been angry in my entire life. And so that's the first stage, is to actually have awareness. So as I was putting this together, and I really did this system on just research of person after person. I've been doing kinesiology for 26 years. And the very first kinesiology that I learned was emotional kinesiology. And we didn't have energetic corrections. And so instead we had to do emotional corrections with everything, the very first. And a lot of it was going back and reliving things and the pain. But this, but really, so we can do it a lot easier now. But these stages of how to process these emotions are still very useful. And so the stage one awareness is, it all starts with the body. And when a person has an emotion that they're not aware of yet, it's sunk down out of their awareness into their physical. And that physical then is then holding the emotion for us, so we're no longer aware of it. So the stage one is to bring it back up, is to bring it out of the physical, out of just the physical body, and up to where we can start to use our brain to process it. Because the brain is such an amazing device. It's got so many connections. It's many neurons as there are stars in the galaxy. And I mean, exactly the number. No, it's around the same number. It's on the same. It's on the same order of magnitude. But the connections between those neurons is astronomical. It's the connection between the number of connections between neurons is so huge. So we have all this processing power. And so instead of just holding it with our emotion, and a lot of physical work can really help, but also adding our brain in to be able to process it too, you can actually process emotions very quickly, especially using kinesiology. So that's the first stage, just to get it up out of the physical body, up to the brain. So the areas of the brain to do that are the somatosensory cortex, Brodmann's areas 1, 2, and 3. So those are what we feel with our body. And it's really interesting, because that was my training from the very beginning, was about body awareness becoming emotional awareness. And so it was kind of my first intuitive hit to look at the primary sensory cortex. And as I started to research online and reading papers, that they've actually, as they've been doing more affective neuroscience lately, they've been finding out that indeed the somatosensory cortex is actually a major emotional control area. And besides just this awareness, it may have huge ability to help us process emotions. So our body can actually help us process the emotions too. But it's that first step when we're bringing it up is when we're feeling the area of the body, we're bringing it through our primary sensory cortex. And so we can actually begin to identify what is affecting us we're not even feeling it yet at that point. We're not even getting to the good stuff. But that's step one, just awareness. So step two is feeling it. And I've used this this formatting with, for instance, the emotional crap triangle in NEPS 4, and those two together, I've had people crying within 2 seconds. Not that that's my goal. I'm not trying to make every person cry that lays on my table, but it's pretty amazing how quickly that using just formatting the stress of feeling, and then looking at the brain areas that are preventing that feeling, and that you can actually get the person really back into a place where they can emotionally be present with it. because that's really what feeling is. Feeling is not, it's not about crying, it's about being emotionally present with what's going on. And a huge part of our formatting is really trying to get a person so they're in line, so they're emotionally present, so they're present with everything going on. So if they're present with everything that's going on, they can they can then make new choices, because until then they can't, they're still out of choice. They're still living with the decisions made by a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or a newborn. And so just putting the stress of feeling it into the circuit gets them back to that present moment. So a lot of times when you're working with this with people, it's there's always a reason to not feel. And gender roles, societal roles, spiritual bypassing, that's a huge one. That's where, no, everything has to be positive. I don't, I just let it go, and I let it to God. I don't have to feel any negative emotions. And that actually can be a detriment to a person's processing if they're unwilling to feel it. Like I say, not saying that we have to get every person to cry, but if they're at least willing to feel the emotions that they felt then their body can continue with this process. So let me step back for a minute. So our formats, we're formatting these stages, and it's just going to be emotion mode times physiology mode, and then one of the yin alarm points. And so each of these are just, it's a fairly simple format. So the stage 1 awareness is going to be emotion times physiology plus the heart alarm point. Stage 2 is going to be emotion times physiology plus the kidney alarm point. Okay, so in feeling, there's a lot of brain areas related to feeling. I could just talk about brain areas all night about feeling, honestly. There's of course the anterior cingulate gyrus. There's various areas in the temporal lobe and the limbic lobe, and of course we already talked about the primary somatosensory cortex. There's the insula. Lots of areas for feeling, but here's some areas that you can look at. And basically, you can look at these areas when when one of these stages comes up. And in especially the first 3 or so, I always recommend looking at NEPS 4 if you've done it. It's, like I say, it's an amazing class for that, and I've taught that and actually have my version teaching of it online. Hugo probably does too. And so anyway, here's a list of some of the areas that we feel with our brain. Okay, so once we feel it, we become present to that emotion, and we're able to not just know that it exists, but actually have it feel it in our bodies, and feel the turmoil that goes with it. We can actually begin to see how it's affecting our lives. And because if you can't see a negative effect in your life, why change it? I don't care if I've stuffed this emotion down. It's affecting me, but I don't feel the effect. So why not just leave it there in my cells? And but then feeling it gives us this motivation to actually look at it and then express it. And once it's able to be expressed, like maybe it wasn't able to be expressed before. And so this stage becomes important because it frequently couldn't be expressed before when they actually had the stress. I was talking about beta waves before. Beta waves are great for expression, and alpha waves are okay, but anything before that, there's not a lot of expression going on. Maybe some artistic expression in theta, but no expression at all in delta. And so so this expression, it may not have gotten done at all when they were young because they didn't have the brainwaves to be able to do it. And or there were things that made it so it was even more stressful to express it. And so frequently expression is a huge part of it, is a huge stress in our circuits in any emotion. So when we express, it's important because it connects our internal world to the external world. And we actually, it becomes something that's, instead of just a burden, it's not just sitting in our cells, sitting in our chakras. It actually becomes, it can move at that point. When you're expressing it, it can move out and move around. And because energy's, energy is just energy, emotional energy, whatever. We don't have to have judgment on it. It's just energy. But if energy gets stuck, that's a different issue. And so expression is where we really start to move the emotional energy around. So once it moves, once we can express it, then we can start to do something with it. It's not just going to be a burden to us anymore. And so we're going to format that with emotion times physiology again, plus lung. I thought that was fun that lung came up as expression, because it's, and the expression out your lungs, out your speech centers. So then our related brain areas, and again, NEPS4 is really amazing here to just be able to do. There's actually expression pathways in NEPS4 that work fantastic, and a lot of those are below the cortex, and so that the person didn't even know that they needed to express at this point, when it's way below, when it's way down in the brain stem. They didn't, it's very unconscious. And so what I have here, I'm mostly talking about the Brodmann's areas, since as places to check. So it's Broca's area. Broca's area is the Brodmann's area for speech. And so that's where a lot of our expression stress is going to be once we can express. So besides Broca's area, check NEPS4, and you can find where that stress is going on. Okay, stage 4. Stage 4 is about owning our emotions. So owning is an interesting word. And I've actually heard this go both ways. I hear different disciplines. Some say, you don't want to own the discipline. You don't want to own the emotion. You want it to be just something that's there and not something you've owned. But my experience and my training and everything I've worked with that have said that owning is actually a really, really major part of these stages of processing. And that's because emotions hold a lot of power over us. Our emotions, like I like to age assess when I work and find what age that we're working with. And I used to kind of think, well, do we want to keep them in the present, or do we want to age assess? And it took me a while to realize that age assessing is actually, you're just finding stress on an issue that they've been keeping in the past. Age assessing means that they're not present. And so anytime that they have stress on age assessing, then that means that they're stressed coming to the present, and so they're stuck in the past. And really, that's what these whole stages of processing are to get the person into the present, get them so their emotions are not holding power over them anymore. But to do that, they have to own it. They have to realize that these emotions are theirs and they formed them. And they created this experience, even if they did it at a subconscious or unconscious level. And so it's not about blame. It's not saying, hey, you did this. It's about saying, the person turned their emotions on. Their brain turned their emotions on. Somebody else didn't turn their emotions on. And so it's about responsibility and also judgment, because a lot of times I'm judging, well, you hurt me, why did you hurt me, which and it may even be true, but to really take full ownership is to I did allow myself to be hurt, even if I didn't know how to not be hurt. I still allowed it. And so it comes back to us, or it comes back to the person who's processing. And that's what this stage is all about. It's about each person reclaiming their emotion and reclaiming that it's their emotion, which then means that movement of the emotion can happen a lot easier, because now they own it. Because if it's something that's just stuck on you, you can't move it. You can't move it around. But if it's something that you own, that you have power over, that you can move around, you can do anything you want with it. And so stage 4 is realizing that. It's realizing that you are in power, or the person you're processing is in power. And so they're no longer a victim at this point. They can be in choice to a certain degree. There's not, I don't like to say, well, you've created everything in your life, it's all about you. I mean, some people are at that point, but others aren't. And so you have to be sensitive about where are they at, how much responsibility can they take over their emotions. But as I've used these formats a lot, it's just about everything else in kinesiology. It's about removing stress. So this is just to remove the stress of them taking responsibility for their emotions. So our format for it is emotion times physiology again, and liver. The liver alarm point. To access that stress that they have, to be able to find the responsibility over their emotions. Related Brodmann areas are the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It's an area about judgment, because essentially before we've owned it, we've judged that somebody else has our power, that somebody else has power over us, and or our emotion itself has power over us, our fear has power over us, our whatever it is. And so we have to take back that judgment and go back into a state of wonder, essentially. And so we turn back on that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex at this point, and we're able to own it, and we're able to be a full agent of our emotion. So these are the areas that they're also related to blame and responsibility. So we can let go of blame and assume responsibility now, which takes us to step 5, forgiveness. So you can't actually forgive someone until you've owned your emotion. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried. Because I was raised to be a good person. And being a good person, you're supposed to forgive people. At least that was what I was raised with in my religious background. And so when I was having a difficulty in my divorce, I just jumped in there and tried to forgive. And I jumped the gun, though. I tried to jump straight to stage 5. I didn't go through the other stages first. And that actually affected me a lot. I was kind of stuck because I thought I had forgiven, but I needed to put some more attention on the first stages before I got to forgiveness. So what is forgiveness? It's because we are realizing that a person who we're forgiving Of course, they don't have power over us anymore. We already realized that in step 4. So what's going on with forgiveness? And forgiveness is really the where we turn on empathy. And empathy, we the other person that we're working with, or the person that we previously blamed, or the emotion, or ourselves, you can have empathy for yourself. That person really is doing the best that they can in some way or another. And to be able to at least some degree see that. And again, if on really, really traumatic stress, you're not forcing forgiveness. And this is the biggest one that I just want to make sure people don't push this one. Because again, it's not about pushing someone to say the words, I forgive you. It's about taking stress out of their psyche, out of their brain that was making it so they can't forgive. And so it's a compassionate forgiveness, because you can bully into forgiveness, and it doesn't work. And so this is, and that's one thing I love about energy kinesiology, is that we're not, that just by helping them with their energy, we are clearing the blocks to allow them to do what's most natural for them. And forgiveness is natural once you clear away those blocks, once you clear away the judgment, once you own your emotions. Forgiveness actually becomes something that everyone can do once they get to that point. And so we can help them. We can help introduce compassion through the energy work. And this is forgiveness is all about compassion and empathy. To really see other people as doing the best they can, and ourselves as doing the best they can, is very powerful. So our format for it is emotion times physiology and the spleen alarm point. This is when you vent your spleen. And the related Brodmann's areas are 7, 9, 40, and 46. They're areas related to empathy and forgiveness. And it's amazing to be able to see another person as a human. To humanize is another way of putting the stage. To humanize whoever it is that they're working with. They're not evil anymore, because face it, they're evil to this point. Stages, especially 1 through 3, and a little bit in 4, they're evil. Yeah, they can be, and which is really bad, especially if it's the person that the person they're working with is themselves. So the heart comes back at this point, and the empathy, and all the things that we're looking to restore. But those didn't come around until we were able to do all the previous steps. And so forgiveness is a lot of times their soul connection turns back on here, and just a lot of major things. The heart chakra activates, and a whole bunch of stuff with forgiveness. You could do an entire class just on forgiveness. Okay, so once the person is forgiven, they've reclaimed their power, they've actually they've forgiven the other person, brought all the stuff back online that's inside of them. Then you do the healing. There's a lot of people out there who say, oh yeah, I'm ready to heal, totally ready to heal. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're actually just ready to feel better. And that means that they're not ready to go through the previous steps if they're only ready to feel better. So once we've been through the previous steps, the person can actually release and heal. And so this is the stage where the physical healing takes place, the mental healing, the emotional healing. It's where the it's where the burden of even having the issue is gone. It's 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 no longer an issue in the person's life because they're seeing the truth. They're seeing that all the associations they had are are no longer there, because really our issues are actually about what we associate. Like a person I was working with was had uh, they had some abuse issues, and they couldn't stand ice cream. And you know, ice cream is ice cream. Why is ice cream stressful? Well, it's the way that the person who abused them, the way he ate ice cream. And so this client began to associate ice cream and stress, or ice cream and evil, or whatever you want to call it. And so their association areas in their brain, probably some taste association, probably the taste association area, the gustatory area, began to associate all their issues with ice cream. And so this person had to work through all the stages of stress and eventually realize that, oh my gosh, ice cream is okay. Ice cream, ice cream is ice cream, and it's not their abuser. And the way he ate ice cream was probably pretty horrible. It sounded horrific from what I could hear, but that didn't have to affect them anymore. And so they let go of the associations of between their issue and the ice cream or whatever it is, because we have associations with a lot of things. We have associations with every single biochemical process in the body. I mean, that's kind of a staggering statement, actually, to think that we have associations with everything, every little cellular messenger, everything that's going on in the body can have associations. And so if we so we can store emotions anywhere, but luckily since we have specific areas of our brain that we can look at and work with on their emotional association. So that's what the Brodmann's areas are on the release. Brodmann's areas 5, 7, 22, 18, 19, 25, 24, 32, 33, 37, and the amygdala. So that's two things, and the amygdala. That's the association areas. So what do you associate with vision? What do you associate with hearing? What do you associate with taste and smell and touch? Touch can have some amazing associations. I mean, I've so many people, especially if they're victims of sexual abuse or something like that, will have horrible touch association. And so this is the stage where that association gets healed, where they can have touch be a normal thing in their life, where ice cream can taste good again, where whatever it is, the person it becomes normalized again. And the anterior cingulate gyrus is the error correcting part of the brain. And so essentially it can say there's no longer errors here. We are at peace. So it can restore the peace to them along with removing these associations. And then of course the amygdala. I mean, the amygdala can honestly be at any stage, but this is the big one. This is the big one where the amygdala is turned off by the anterior cingulate gyrus, and that they return to a state of normalcy. And normalcy is an interesting word, because especially with really old issues, normalcy might be stress, but this is a better state of normalcy. I've had so many people say, I did not realize that I could feel this way, that I could feel just, I could look at the ice cream or whatever it is and just feel fine and just be at peace again. so this stage really is reclaiming our peace. It's reclaiming our lives. And this is the one that comes up the most when I'm working on people. There's all the stages come up, but this is the one that comes up. I mean, almost comes up in every issue. I'd say 80% of people's issues have the release stage, because those associations are so powerful. And that turning off the amygdala is really what makes an issue. Once the amygdala is turned off, then we can have whatever we want going around in our Brodmann's areas. And so we still have to do the work on the brain, but once the amygdala effect is gone, the amygdala influence, we can uh, move stuff around in the cortex without violating our integrity, essentially, because the amygdala has to keep us alive. And so you're not going to turn off an issue and not turn off the amygdala, because the amygdala will say, we need to stay alive. That's really important. And so we have to honor our survival centers, and this is the stage where we can help release those. So we've resolved the issue at this point. We've returned to a state of, in a way, a state of innocence is what I call it. Not everyone sees that word meaning the same thing that I do, but I see innocence here, and that we can return to a state of pure being after this stage 6. But there's still one more stage. There's still one thing that needs to happen. And as I was putting the system together, I couldn't figure it out. There was something else. There's another stage there. What's going on? What is that 7th stage? And that stage is integration. Because we can resolve our issues. We can, I'm fine. No more charge. I don't have any charge on that issue at all. But there's something else that we need to do. What we've just done is we've gone to an area of our brain where our issue is held, and we've released it. But now we need to rewire our brain. We need to rewire the whole thing, because we need to connect up what we just processed, that whole 6-stage process that we just did, and connect it up to everything else. So there's no one area for this. It's because we need to connect it to every aspect of our lives. And if our lives are connected, then we're connected. And we remove separation from our lives, because separation is actually what causes a lot of issues. When we talk about brain integration, it's taking our entire lives and putting it together so that we have integrity. Integration, integrity. And so step 7 is taking our newfound, our strides that we've made and connecting it up to everything else, so that everything we've done really matters in our life. So stage 7 is the corpus callosum and the other white matter tracts in the brain, the association fibers and the projection fibers, but especially the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is that area that holds the 2 hemispheres of the brain together and connects everything between the 2. And so it holds our lives together in a way. And so step 7 is to then activate our newfound healing in various parts of our lives, going across the corpus callosum and having integrity throughout our entire brain related to this experience. So, and I didn't do our formats for our last one. The format for stage 6 was emotion physiology and pericardium. and it's returned to the heart. So pericardium is the sac around the heart. It's also circulation and connecting everything up and disassociating their stress. And then stage 7 is central vessel, and that's going all around the brain. And so our format is to then help them integrate this experience into their lives. So again, emotion times physiology and the CV. So those are our 7 stages of processing. We and here's all of them together in one sheet, and the related Brodmann's areas on one side, and the formats. So these are not going to come up linearly. You're not going to have to, if you're going to use these, you're not going to have to say, okay, 1, 2, 3. You could do it that way. I've never found that to be terribly useful, though. What I found is that they've gotten stuck on 1 or 2 of these areas. Sometimes 3, it's a big issue, but it's usually not all of them. And so I'll go through and I'll test awareness, emotion times physiology plus heart, then kidney, and then lung, and just find the first one that shows, and then work with that and work with them at that point. Work with them where they're at. Are they having a hard time just even being aware of this? Are they in complete denial, basically? Are they having a hard time feeling to actually go into the emotion? And because an emotion really is an experience. And to experience your emotion is to experience yourself. Are they having a hard time expressing? And expressing doesn't have to be just verbally. The Broca's area is in there, but there can be other ways of expressing too. But getting them to the point of where they can talk about it is that's huge. That's what expressing is all about. And that could be their major stress. They might have been fine with awareness and feeling it. Yeah, they've been feeling it every day. It's been a tough one, but they haven't been able to achieve that catharsis. Why? Well, maybe they're stuck on expressing. Maybe they can't actually talk about it. Maybe they're stuck in their own hell, because that's really when you can't express a feeling but you're feeling it, that's hell right there. And so working through that level of expressing can then help them get out of their personal hell. Maybe they're stuck on owning it. If they're stuck on owning it, then they can express it all day, and those people, you're going to hear them. You're going to hear them talk and talk and talk, and they're going to talk about the same thing again and again and again. And eventually just stop, okay, we've heard this. You're great at expressing. Thank you so much for expressing. But, after about the 53rd time, it began to get a little old. And so it's because they're stuck. They're stuck on they're not able to own it. They can't move on from stage 3. And so when you work with owning it on them, then they can start to take responsibility. And it's funny, once you take responsibility for something, you don't have to talk about it all the time anymore. You don't have to continually express it. And so that owning can be really handy to work with someone when that's all that Aunt Norma has talked about for the last 50 years has been that experience where Uncle Bob, he looked at the wrong woman in the wrong way, and boy, that's her story now. And so then you can work with her for owning it, and she can work with her part of the issue. and not have to be stuck in that cycle of expression. So the next stage that they could get stuck on is, of course, forgiveness. And that's an interesting one because they've owned it, but so they've done the first four stages, but they can't actually forgive. And so there's this gray area in there, and they're kind of just stuck in just an area of confusion at that point because they know that it's them, they know that it's their feeling, but they still can't forgive. And so there's the forgiveness is, you know, that's still a little bit of that's an uncomfortable place to be in. And so just helping them, inching them towards forgiveness and clearing out their judgments, and and really, you know, helping them the previous step, because sometimes it really is step four that they need to own it. But boy, that forgiveness is really about opening the heart and getting them to open up that heart again, because the issue is not going to resolve no matter how much they know it's them. It's not going to resolve if their heart's not open. So then step six, stage six, the release. So if they're stuck and not being able to release, then you know, they just keep forgiving again and again and stay in the state of forgiveness, but they're not quite, you know, they're not quite able to release it out of their associations. They're still worried about being hurt again, is essentially what it is. Well, I've forgiven this person, but what about the next person that comes along and hurts me? They could hurt me too. So I forgive you, but I haven't released it out of me all the way. And so that's that release, like I say, that's really the most important step. I mean, they're all important, but to have people get to that, because that's where it's actually becomes a non-issue there. So if they're stuck on that one, then their association areas and their anterior cingulate gyrus we get to help them kind of reset those areas and their amygdala. So that the issue's all resolved, all done. Oh, yeah, that's right. Except for integrating it. And so if they're stuck on integration, that just means that it's become a very small part of their lives, and that they don't go back to it. We don't talk about this anymore. I mean, it's fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. But they need to be able to integrate it and use it in the rest of their lives, because it's going to be affecting a lot of different parts of their life, even because now you've got one part of their brain that's forgiven. They've forgiven the person in one part of their brain, but the rest of their brain is going, we don't have to deal with this. And so I don't usually see huge stress on this, but it is nice to get their brain integrated so that their experience which is now a positive thing, because basically by going through these steps, we've transformed their experience from a negative, stressful experience into something more positive. And again, it depends on the issue, but they might have even received something like a spiritual gift from this process. And that spiritual gift, because really, as we do the work, we get spiritual gifts all the time. And so doing this work really becomes, it lets us find the silver lining in the cloud. And so the integration is then about our ability to spread that silver lining throughout our being. And that really increases our spiritual awareness. It lets everything, it really is the part of our spiritual journey that just keeps building and building and building as we're going. And so it's how we become a whole being, and we become connected up. So our emotions, our thoughts, everything can work in more or less harmony, so that we can have integrity in what we're doing. We can have parts of us be not just hanging out everywhere. but different parts of us we can pull in and have them be working parts of our lives. And so we can do this with each person. Each issue that comes up, we can test and see if emotion times physiology shows. And if you want to be more specific, you can just put it in the circuit and see what shows. If there's obviously emotions in this circuit, you can just put emotion times physiology in the circuit and then test the yin alarm points and see where they're at. And one stage is going to have stress. If there's any emotion to the issue at all, at the very least, the integration is going to have stress, but usually at least the release and catharsis, stage 6 has stress. And so you can just get a reading very early on what's going on emotionally in this circuit. And I like to do it just after every balance before I've done corrections is where I like to do it personally. Sometimes I do it reversed order. If somebody comes in with an emotional issue, I'll start with this. And, well, where are you at in your emotional issue? Are you in awareness? Are you in feeling? Are you in expressing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And where they're at is actually where they're stuck, typically. So if they're expressing a lot, they're stuck on owning, et cetera. So usually, like I say, the beginning or the end right before corrections on the issue, I like to plug this in. And then you can just talk to them. You can talk to them about, if if forgiveness comes up, you can talk about who would be difficult to forgive. Again, you don't have to force them to forgive. You're not trying to say the affirmation on forgiving them. You can if you feel like they're ready, but just asking them who's the most difficult person to forgive in this situation, or what would it be like to forgive each person in this situation? And that's another great question that you can ask them, because it's just theoretical, but that still, you can grab that into the circuit and then work on those brain areas that are associated with it. So again, each of these areas are to help move them along until they have peace in their lives and help resolve whatever's in the circuit, because there's emotions in so many aspects of life, and this process can help you. And again, you can talk to them in each stage. We're not just formatting here, but they can give you something to talk about, but really to access where they're at and honor them in their emotional journey. Okay. So now, thank you. You can stop recording and we'll do questions.